Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. So, as you can tell, the quality is not great, and that's because my sister has once again stolen my camera. So I'm filming this on my laptop. Hopefully the sound should be good. Yeah, or alright at least, but it'll be a bit fuzzy, but you know, hopefully you can put up with that. It doesn't matter so much because this isn't a scripted video. I was thinking about doing a scripted video, then I was like, I just want to talk about this. I feel be better in a more conversational format, and if I feel I need to in the future, maybe I will do a structured, argumentative full video on this. But yeah, I just wanted to address a few things that people have been bringing up in regards to. So I want to clarify my position. That's what I want to do when I was talking about the potential to exploit 18-year-olds or teenagers or young adults, basically. And me saying that, well, it's incredibly easy to do. They're just out of childhood. And that I think unless you're really careful about it, and depending on how big the age difference, it's very easy for it to be inherently predatory and manipulative and exploitative. So I wanted to talk properly about my position, because some people are kind of conflating this with the conversations then become about, well, we don't want to infantilize young adults, and that's, what I mean. Okay, so I want to talk about this and explain. And I also think it's an interesting conversation. There's several different kind of avenues to go down. So I do want to read part of an email that I was talking to someone about, that someone had messaged me. So this isn't, and I won't say his name because I don't know if you want me to say it. So this is, the reason being because, okay, I'll establish. So it's a very respectful email. I'm not doing this to be like, fuck you, you're an idiot. It's not that kind of video. But I wanted to read out part of it just because it probably condenses a few separate arguments that other people had, because I've seen this kind of comment kind of crop up a few times along with some other stuff. So I just wanted to kind of fully explain, because I understand the point where some people are coming from. So I want to explain kind of what I mean when I'm talking about. And I'm gonna just say, so the person sent me this email. We were having a good conversation. So if I get because I might well do, if I get angry or start ranting in this, which I probably will, I suspect that will happen at some point. It's not this is, or if I call people idiots at any point, that'll be probably because of the more stupid or annoying kind of other comment. This is not directed at you, basically. The person sent me the email. It's a very respectful, sensible email. That's my point. This is just, if it gets ranty, it's also because of some people saying very silly things. So it's not. I'm using part of the email to, just because it says quite well, lays it out quite well, in terms of various different points of view people have brought up, but it's not a response to you and this email. It's just because I want to clarify my position, because this is something a few people have said. So I'll just read out, I'll just read out part of this. So you've said, a small number of things have actually cropped up in your videos that I slightly disagree with you on, probably the biggest one being your view on teens being adults. My view is, sure, 18-year-olds are legally adults, but since I'm really big on natural law, my view is that human laws don't matter when it comes to morality. I think someone is an adult when they've stopped growing. I base my view on biology. It also just seems like the logical stance. How can someone still be a child when they are fully grown? I don't blame you for thinking of your 18-year-old sister as a child. I think the problem is the way society treats this subject. It seems to me like the people in power for the past few decades want everyone as helpless as possible, and part of that is increasing the age of adulthood higher and higher. We wouldn't think of people fully biologically grown as children if we actually expected people to act like adults once they're fully grown. So I agree with parts of that. I'm going to explain, because I think part of this is people misunderstanding my position, what I'm talking about, and part of it, So, okay, I'll just start off with a few. I've kind of got notes here, and we'll see kind of where it goes. Hopefully this will become a conversation. So, just in terms of someone's a full adult once they've stopped growing, if you're going purely off biology, well, by that logic, doesn't a premature puberty make someone an adult? So I knew a girl who started puberty at 9, and she was biologically fully developed as a very young teen, like physically. I mean, is she an adult then? Is she, because she's biologically fully grown, if that's, because I would count it way more in terms of mental maturity. I think that's a massive factor. So is she then fully grown? Can she go out into the world as an adult? Can she have adult relationships with adult men as a young teen? Because she's biologically, prematurely, like fully developed and fully grown. But also, even if from a biological aspect, so, I mean, your brain isn't properly developed until your mid-20s, right? And again, can I just, I'm not arguing that for people only to become legal adults by the time they hit like 25. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if we're going off that, conclude that it's biologically fully grown, okay, even if I take that, even if I agree with that kind of premise, then it's like, well, yeah, so part of the physical body, biological, is your brain, which isn't, so even by that, then actually you can't count 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds as fully grown adults, because they're not, because their brains aren't fully developed yet. Is the first thing that I would say. Also, you don't suddenly reach adulthood over... Like, I agree with the fact that it's like someone doesn't just become an adult when they're 18, like it's about when you're fully grown, but the point of that is, yes, it's a process then, isn't it? So it's not just like you wake up one day... and I understand this, you know, in human law, we've got to have an age point where we say, well, we agree, okay, this person is now an adult. But yes, it's also right. It's like, well, when they're fully grown. But when does that happen? When do they become fully grown? Because it doesn't just happen in a second. Suddenly you've fully grown. It's like it's a gradual process. And how can you define the moment when they are suddenly fully grown from one moment to the next? Like it's a slow process. So that's kind of like I feel like this almost supports my point more than it disproves my point. In terms that people who are very newly adults, yeah, we can't treat them as if like. Expect that they're full-on adults. And hang on, because I'm going to get into more of this and talk about infantilizing young adults, because I agree that that's also a problem. But my point really with this, what I'm arguing, and I know I said in that video, and a lot of people putting these criticisms at me are the ones who've just seen my short video that I uploaded before on Andrew Tate, and the teenage girl thing, as opposed to my longer video where I feel like I explained then. I went on to expand more on my views in more depth, but quite a lot of those comments are from just that video. People saying you can't infantilize young people, because I did say kids. Still think it's fair to describe 18 and 19-year-olds as kids, because they kind of are. Also, yes, they're adults, but that's the point. It's kind of it's like a weird liminal state where you kind of are both in different ways. But my point is with that isn't necessarily that they aren't adults, or that we should push off adulthood until later. That's not my point. My argument is that adulthood is a process, and from 17 to 18, you don't suddenly snap into being a grown-up. I'm a bit confused why people find this controversial, that I'm saying that, hey, 18-year-olds are more easily manipulated and immature than someone even a couple of years older, in their early 20s. Because 18-year-olds have literally just become an adult. Their whole lives, they're used to adults telling them what to do, and then suddenly... Like, I'm kind of confused why so many people are like, act like this is like the wildest take they've ever heard. I don't know, like, maybe they're not acting like that, but that are just, like, is it controversial for me to say that, hey, 18-year-olds aren't adults, like, in the same way that people in their mid-20s are adults? Is that a controversial thing to say? I didn't realise that was, that seems not only is... To me, does that seem like an uncontroversial take, but also an incredibly obvious one? I don't know. So my point is, and again, I'm going to go a bit all over the place here because I haven't scripted this or structured this, because there's a few things I wanted to discuss, because I think it's an interesting conversation. So, but can I, like, I want to clarify, and I'll hopefully, go into and expand on this more. I'm not arguing, I've got some notes, so I'm not arguing for infantilizing young adults. Okay, I actually agree. I think young adults should be given more responsibility, and that it would actually help them be less easily manipulated. I actually agree. So I think the problem is, I think some people have heard what I'm saying and assumed, oh, you want to push off adulthood until really late, like let's coddle everyone, helicopter parenting, which is, it's just kind of funny as well. I don't know, people don't, but if people knew like how, either how I was with my little sister or how my parents raised us all, which is very free range, hands off kind of parenting. Very much lots of like, okay, so the thing is, yeah, I agree. I think kids should be given more responsibility, and young adults. I think they should, and that it would actually help them be less easily manipulated. But here's the thing, here's the key point. But a teenager dating someone decades older isn't more responsibility. If anything, that's the infantilization, where they can stay the baby forever. Do you kind of get what I'm kind of getting at here? That's not them having, oh, they're suddenly an adult now, we've got to let, the 18-year-olds, we shouldn't, think, is there something a bit weird going on if there's someone who's 35 dating an 18-year-old? Let's pretend there's no power dynamic. That's the attitude that I'm getting from people that's a bit annoying. It's like, hey, let's pretend that when they suddenly turned 18, they became a fully functioning adult, as soon as even, and that we should hold them to all the same standards as, people in their, 20s, and they, that's more responsibility if they date someone who's, a couple of decades older or whatever, when they're, when they're a teenager, and that's not more responsibility. I agree. We should be treating younger people, teenagers and young adults, we should be treating them more like adults. But my point is that them, going off and dating people decades older than them is not doing that. That's the opposite. That's infantilizing them because they get to be the baby. They get to be, do you kind of, I'm not saying in all cases, but let's not, I feel like my point was obvious, but maybe not. Because the other thing is, and I understand why people are coming from. I think people have that immediate negative reaction to some of what I was saying because it's it's the daycare generation. Adults are infantilized more and more, and I agree with a lot of that. And I'm not arguing for helicopter parenting until someone's in their mid-20s. I'm not saying that. I think they should have more responsibility from younger. I think helicopter parenting is probably really bad. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying suffocate your children. And also the other thing is, because a couple of people said this, that either accused me of being controlling of my sister or infantilizing her because I would not want her as an 18-year-old to be dating a 35-year-old man. The funny thing about that is that, and I know this is not people's fault because, people take what they see from the internet, but that our relationship is not like that at all. Most of the time, she and I live hundreds of miles away. I don't care who she dates. And I don't mean that in the mean way. Obviously I'm interested in her life if she wants to tell me. But I'm never what's going on, maybe sometimes it's a joke, but it's I'll wait for her to say, and she'll tell me if she wants to tell me. So, and I don't, as long as it's if it's someone her age, I trust her to be sensible, make her own decisions, and that she, but that's not me being concerned that she'd be dating a 35-year-old and saying, and stepping in at that point is not the same as me being really controlling and helicopter and suffocating her. It's just funny as well, because she's, oh my god, she's a fucking badass, which she's had responsibility from a very young age. At the age of 3, she was catching chickens and wringing their necks perfectly fine and then plucking them, and she was given big knives to handle when she was very, very young to help cook and all of this, and my parents did that with kind of all of us. It's responsibility from a young age. We're going to throw you out of the house, go into the woods all day by yourselves and just play and you'll probably be fine. I think that's a really good parenting style. I'm talking about this because there's several different kind of angles I want to go at. So I'm not saying that we should infantilize children. And I think that children should be given responsibilities young. And I think that's a good thing. And it's just, I'm just kind of a bit irritated at the kind of, and I understand why people are making that assumption about what I was saying, probably because of the kind of culture nowadays. But it's it annoys me because it's the polar opposite of how I was parented and also what I think is really good parenting as well. My parents were really hands-off with us. I'm very hands-off with my younger sister in her life. She wants to let me... I'm not, checking her phone or reading her diaries and, I need to know everything. It's her life. It's her... I know that. She's sensible enough to be able to... 18, yes, she's sensible enough and mature enough and responsible enough to be able to make her own decisions, to decide who she wants to date, those things. But I don't know... but that doesn't mean that then, I think I would then be also a bad sister if I wasn't concerned if I heard she's dating a 35-year-old. I think that's totally different for me to step in and go, what are you doing? What's happening? And for me to not be concerned, even though, yes, I know she's responsible and she's capable and, she's very independent and can deal with the responsibilities, for me to not be worried that she's been taken advantage of or could be manipulated by someone who's 35. I would be a bad sister. That's not overprotective or controlling. that's concerned. And I would actually think that you're failing in your job as an older sibling if you have a far younger sibling and you're just like, if you're not stepping in at that point and saying, what's happening here? Like, I think you're failing in your duty as an older sibling or a parent, even if, oh, well, they're 18 now, do it, like, I'm just, it's just, like, wild to me that there's a difference between, I'm not involved in her dating life, as long as she's not dating 35-year-olds. Does this make sense to people? I don't know why this is, like, again, oh my goodness. I'm not, I don't need to, give her boyfriends the third degree or check who she's seeing or who she's dating, but there's a difference between that and, again, a 30. Why? Because if she's dating someone who's, like, around her age, then they're probably, like, on a similar level. It's the chances are that she's going to be taken advantage of and manipulated, or that, there's something weird going on, are quite low compared to if she's dating a 35-year-old. Am I crazy, or is this, like, a really uncontroversial thing to say? So this is kind of what I wanted to talk about. Saying that 18-year-olds aren't adults definitionally isn't really the argument. My argument is that they're naive and vulnerable and make obvious targets for preying on where there's an obvious power dynamic. So, and I even say in the longer video, not in the short one, but in the longer one, that it's different. Can we also remember the context which I was saying this in? I'm not talking about someone who, like, an age gap relationship where someone's 18 and they're dating someone way older, and I'm coming along and saying, well, that's inherently abusive, and that's really, like, that's, I'm not can we just appreciate what the context was that I was bringing that up in? I'm bringing that up in the context of a certain fella who is 35, 36, and is talking about why you should go for really young girls because they're easy to mind control, but in basically that's what he's saying. So this is the context of what I'm talking about. And is he doing that to then make their lives better? No. He's getting them to do online sex work. I'm sorry, is that, can people not, am I insane? Is that not, like, that's the context in which I'm saying that in. Can we like understand that? So, and is it wrong in general for, like, a 35-year-old to date an 18-year-old? Okay, I'm going to say it depends how they do it. I'm going to say I think it would be really rare for that to be a healthy dynamic. I'm not saying it's impossible, and, like, this is all nuance and shades of grey, but with something like that, and that's different to someone in their early 20s. The thing, like, I don't think people understand the massive difference that happens from when you're 17, 18, and you've just left school into early 20s. And your brain's more fully developed then, like, everything. You've more, like, a spirit, like, I just don't, But the point is, so is it wrong, inherently wrong, for a 35-year-old to date an 18-year-old? Or someone who's way older to date an 18-year-old, or even late 20s to date an 18-year-old? Okay, I would say it depends how they do it. At the very least, they'd have to make a huge conscious effort on their part to not become manipulative or to steamroll that person. I think they'd have to consciously be aware of, it would be really easy for me to manipulate this person or to steamroll them or to push them and get them to do things that I think they should do or want them to do. And I think you would have to make a conscious effort to be aware of that, that you have that advantage that you could do that easily, and you'd have to understand that that person is still a kid in many ways. So is it wrong for someone to date someone of that age? I mean, I think it's weird. I do. I think in the rare cases that it could be fine, as long, but like 18, 19-year-olds, still teenagers, I think it's mostly weird. But is it inherently wrong? Not necessarily, depending on how you do it and why you've decided to go out with this person. So on the other hand, is it wrong for an older person to specifically target that age group because they're more malleable, because they can be dominated and manipulated more easily? For that reason, yes, absolutely, I think that's wrong. I don't understand why that's a controversial thing to say. Of course that's wrong. That's a separate conversation, but I'm not even talking about men who are wanting to go for 18 or 19-year-old girls to marry them. Fucking, is Mr. Potato Head doing that? Is he finding that, like, this is the point? Is he finding girls that age to say, well, I'm going to marry you and that's a totally different scenario. I mean, I still think there's a lot of questions around that, but that would be totally different to, oh no, I'm going for them because they're going to be my employees and also kind of my girlfriends. And it sounds a lot like trafficking. I mean, whether it is or not, we'll see. But it's at the very least incredibly fucking morally reprehensible. I just don't understand why I don't know why people kind of can't make these like nuances and distinctions. Several things can be true at once. Someone could still be an adult and we say they should have more responsibilities, but also can we not let them be taken advantage? Like, I just don't. Okay. Yeah, I think it's taking advantage to do that, to target someone of that age group for those specific reasons. And I think it's disingenuous to pretend otherwise. I just don't, yeah. It's like, I've said this, it's the same with taking advantage of old people. No one's arguing that they're not autonomous adults, but do they have less awareness of the current world? Yes. Are they more mentally vulnerable? More easily confused or taken advantage of? Or maybe not understanding how, like, the current system as it is in the present day is all set up into, like... Yeah. 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 Doesn't mean they're not autonomous adults, but it means we recognise that certain groups, it's wrong to screw with them. Okay. Like, here's the thing, like, I would love teenagers to have more responsibility, but that's not dating a 35-year-old who gets you on webcam. That's not more responsibility, that's less. You're being infantilized then, you're being controlled. That's the total opposite of giving a teenager more responsibility or preparing them for the world or making them an adult. That's like the opposite. And here's the thing, so it's the job of those older to guide and protect those younger. I believe that. And we can do that while still acknowledging that they're adults. So preying on that power dynamic is awful. And yes, 18-year-olds at school are absolutely not like adults. Are absolutely not adults like someone even in their early 20s is an adult. Yeah, I said, like, the growth that happens in those few years is huge, you know? And the thing is, in the societies where people are treated as adults when they're younger and given more responsibilities, the difference is they're not just like, I don't know what people, they're not just thrown out into the world and thrown out the nest and expected to know it all overnight. That's not what happens. They were and / are massively guided and watched out for by those who were older and gradually given more responsibilities, because they also know that you don't just become an adult overnight. And let's also not forget that in places where that's the case, often there are way stronger communities, way stronger, like people looking out for each other and also recognising that, hey, this young girl might be considered an adult, but what's that man over there? Why are you interested in her? What's your game? Like, the people watching out for her. Or for young men as well. It's like... And here, I don't want to talk about, like, take a shot every time I talk about my grandparents in these videos, and you'll be... I mean, I talk about them because I think it's a valuable resource. Like, there's lots of wisdom you can gain from observing and the lives of older people, and I think, I know I refer back to my granddad a lot and my grandmother, but I think that's valuable. And I think, yeah, so I'm going to do it again, basically. But, so even, like... Back in the, when my granddad, he went down the mines at 14. So, in terms of being cast out of childhood suddenly, that'll do it, I think, probably. 14 years old, already working an incredibly dangerous and physically strenuous job. But even, like, and I'm not arguing that we should send 14-year-olds down the mines again, that's not the point. But, like, and the point is, did he become an adult way sooner than a lot of young people today? Of course. Would he, at 18 years old, be probably far more capable and more of an adult than most men, like, now at 30 are? Yeah, I'm going to say that he probably would have been. Now, that didn't come without its fair, like, the drawbacks as well. Like, in late, I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but there are drawbacks to that as well. Like, in later life, he had PTSD. He didn't realise that's what it was. He would told my mum this when he was old. He was like, I don't know what's going on. He goes, I'm suddenly... And this happened, it was weird. It was, like, delayed. It happened when he was old. But he started telling me, he was like, I'm waking up in the middle of the night just with, like... Because there was... Yeah, a mining explosion that he saw with lots of... It was very gruesome and horrific. And he was telling my mum, like, I just see it all again. Like, the bodies and all... Like, what's the... Like... I don't know why, I just wake up. And she was like, Dad, I think that's PTSD. And he's like, no, not that. But the point, like, I'm not saying that's necessarily that's necessarily a good thing. And also, I mean, I don't want, this is a separate topic for a separate time, but also as a father, like there are things that come with doing that, with doing a difficult job, or like he found it difficult in many ways to connect with his children, and he, you know, he was, I don't want to say he was a better grandfather than he was father, because I think that would be very unfair on him, and he absolutely was doing his best and did, you know, amazing things to provide for his family, but him and my mum didn't get on until she had her own children, and he really, like, he couldn't, which he deserved at that point, to enjoy life at that point as well, but he then could connect, I think, with his children and grandchildren in a way that he was just quite, never overly mean or abusive, I'm not saying that, but he was just quite angry when he was younger, as he'd have to be, and quite, because he had a difficult job. Anyway, but I'm just saying that this is not all, like, not all of it's good, not all of it's glorified, just because, yeah, there were positives that came with that, and he was way more capable at a younger age. It's like, well, other things suffered in his life. I'm just making that point, but anyway, that's kind of separate. But my point is that, so when he's 14, he's down, so he became an adult sooner, and be more probably capable and treated more as an adult when he was 18. But the thing with that, 14, down the mines, do you think that he went down there and all the other men were treating him like they were each other, the others? Do you think? No. They monitored him constantly. That's what they were, the younger ones, because they're like, well, they still saw him as a boy. It's like, you're down, you're working now, but you're still a boy. So he didn't do all the jobs that they did. He didn't, they wouldn't talk about certain things in front of him. Certain topics they wouldn't, because, oh, well, he's still a boy. They just wouldn't, like, there were some things, they're like, well, we're not going to talk about this thing in front of him. And, you know, like, they guided him a lot. He didn't have to, it's gradual. So even though, yes, he had more responsibility, it's like, and I just don't, and also, people around them were still, like, for young adults, and you know, that would have continued when you go, although at that point, he's probably far more of, like, a sorted, functioning adult at 18 than anyone today is, but, well, in some ways, heavily traumatised, but, the thing is with that is, people around young adults are still looking out for them, and they recognise that you're becoming an adult now, you need more responsibility, you can go out into the world, and I agree with all of that. I think I'm not arguing, this is my point, I'm not arguing for the infantilization of adults. I actually think that young adults should have more responsibilities from a young age. As I said, I feel like that's how my parents raised us, and that's hugely beneficial, but that doesn't mean that. And I think actually that prepares you and makes you less easily to be manipulated, because you're not as infantilized by the time you get to 18, 19. But that still doesn't mean that you're the same as an adult, because your brain just isn't fully developed, and there's other things you're naive to, and it's just, and you're still a kid. You are, in many ways, you're kind of still a kid. I mean, and here's the thing, because I know that in the kind of original email it was saying, you know, I understand why you still see your 18-year-old sister as a child. Okay. I don't see her as a child in the same way that I did when she was, like, 12. Our relationship has changed. Like, when she was, you know, I sometimes used to tell her, older sister syndrome, what can I say, eldest sister syndrome, but, like, sometimes I tell her, you know, you have to go to bed, or, like, tell her things like that, or, like, I stopped doing that years ago. Because the relationship kind of, and again, I'm not her parent. It's not like, it was never like a parent-child relationship anyway, but it was different in the sense because I'm 8 years older than her. There is like, it's a slightly different sibling relationship. But do I still see her as a child in the same way I used to? No. Do I tell her what to do? No. Would she listen to me if I did? No. We're more like, we become more like equals now. Now, are we fully, are we fully equals? Like, I'm not saying that I'm better than her, this is not my point, but are we fully, like, equals now? Not quite, because I'm still a fair bit older than her, and at this age it still means quite a fair bit, but are we more so as peers and equals than we used to be? Of course. And probably in a couple of years, even because I say she's very, like, grown up for her age, will we be probably, like, fully equals that in a couple of years? Yeah, probably. I don't see her as a child. I see her as a very independent, intelligent young woman who also in some ways is still a kid. It's like, it's a different, am I explaining myself as a different thing? And seeing that in some ways and in certain ways she's ready for a lot of responsibilities, and in other ways, is there cause for concern if she starts dating someone in his mid-30s? Yeah. So, and like in the way that I wouldn't be concerned if she was in her early 20s, even, and she was dating someone of that age. I mean, at that point, I'd still be like, do you know what you're doing? You should, like... But that's not going to be the same, even at that point in a few years' time, as it would be now, where it's like, who is this? Who is this man? Why is he talking to you? Like... And also, it's not just her. Can I just say, people saying I see my age... It's... Okay, I've been around other 18-year-olds. So, part of what I do for work, sometimes I'm on a building site. And you have there, so... You got the construction workers, the builders, the electricians, the people, and often they'll have young lads with them, teenage boys who are like apprenticed and working for them. So these guys will probably they'll be anywhere from like most of them probably like set around 17 years old. These boys who are like starting, they're learning the trade. They're there, so they've got a job now, or they're 18. There's one boy who's 18. They're 17, 18. They're kind of they're learning doing construction or learning to be an electrician or a plumber or whatever it is. They're working there. These guys, the men that are looking after these young lads, they're not treating them just because they're 18. They're not treating them like an adult. It's like, yeah, you're here and you've got a job, and they're guiding them, they're telling them what to do, and they're treating them with respect as right, you need to become an adult. That's the attitude. I think we should have that attitude with young people. It's not about coddling them, but it's an attitude of, right, you should become an adult, but no one ever, it's not just like suddenly you're an adult now. I'm going to expect you to just act like an adult of someone who's in their mid-20s when you're 18, and you've just come out of school to do this work placement with me, to do this apprenticeship. And that's the thing, because I've been around, it's not just her, again, working there, like around some of these young lads. You're not going to fucking tell me that some of these fucking... No offence to them, they're very sweet. But these fucking 17-year-old, 18-year-old boys are adults. You're not going to convince me of that. It's not just my sister, because I've seen her growing up, that I'm infantilizing her and seeing her that way. I feel like a lot of people saying this, just don't know any 18-year-olds. Go and, well, maybe don't, I don't know, if you can in a non-creepy way, just go and hang out with 18-year-olds. And then tell me that they're the same as people in their, early to mid-20s. Go and do it and tell me. They're not. They're children. And in some ways they're not. They're not children like actual children. I'm not saying, they're little baby children. We should treat them and it's not like I spoke to these, that some of them are towering over me. Not like I spoke to these 17-year-old, 18-year-old boys like they were kids, because they'd have fucking hated that. I didn't talk, that's not what I'm saying. But I did acknowledge, it was just very obvious to me, the age difference. It was very obvious to me that in many ways they were still childlike, and talking to them respectfully, and I expected them to become adults, to become men, but that they're not there yet. That they're becoming that, but that they're not there yet. I just, yeah. So it's not just her. It's like, no, I've worked with 17-year-olds. Anyone who's worked with 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds as well. I've worked with 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds. And they're stupid. They are. They're lovely, and some of them are smart, but they're also stupid with it. Even the smart ones are kind of stupid. In many ways. Does that kind of explain this? Was that everything I wanted to talk about? Because I understand why people have that reaction. Because they're talking, we don't want to infantilize people. No, I agree. And as I'm saying, I think that's really terrible, to infantilize children, or to not give them responsibilities, or to not just sometimes throw them out the house. I mean, if you're in a safe area, if you can do that, to just throw them out of the house and be like, be gone, small child. And I think and that's the other, I actually really despise helicopter parenting. I think it's really bad, for boys and girls. It doesn't mean don't neglect your children either, but that suffocating, constantly, I don't know, I think there's something to be said for, I mean, maybe everyone's biased in terms of how they were raised, but I'm quite grateful for how my parents did it. It was kind of right, well, so if I had laundry and I didn't do my laundry, my mum was never on my you need to do your laundry, or she wasn't doing it for me. If I didn't do laundry, I would have nothing to wear because my clothes would be dirty and I hadn't done the laundry. And that was on me. And if it was a problem, if I don't have anything to wear for school, well, it sounds like a you problem, Galatea. Why didn't you do your laundry? I know this is small things, but no, they're kind of related in terms of giving kids more and more responsibility from a younger age. So I agree with like things like that, and I think that's helpful in becoming an adult and like learning responsibilities. And I wanted to do another video on this, on like, because there was a great thing that when I talked to my dad, there's like a great metaphor for how like my parents kind of like ethos or philosophy and how they like raised us. Okay, should I say it now? Maybe. Okay, this is kind of getting unrelated, but I'll go on to this because I understand what people are saying when they're saying that. When they're saying that to me, like, we don't want to infantilize young adults and act like they're babies. I'm not saying that. Like, I feel, does it make sense, the distinction I'm making? I'm not saying we treat them like babies, but we don't expect them to be like, we understand, and it's not even about so much like them. I think we should expect them to act like adults, yes, but it's more like the people around them. This is more like less so even a message for them that it's like, yeah, we should treat them like adults and say you need to become an adult. But it's like for the adults around them, it's like for us to know. It's not about that it's not even that we necessarily treat them like they're children or differently. But I feel like it's for adults around them to know, hey, we need to, like, we watch out for them because they're just new adults. They're just coming into, like, so we look out for them and we watch out for them. And you find that a lot with older women and like looking out for young girls, like, because they just don't know the world in the same. You just like I don't know. But I think I'm not arguing for helicopter parenting or for doing things for your children and not teaching them responsibility. So maybe I will say this. So, what my parents used to do, and I was going to do a video on this because I really liked this, but. And this is something I talked about with my dad. It didn't make it into, when I interviewed him, it didn't make it into the full video, but so something my parents used to do, and they did it with all of us, but remember with me, because I used to climb trees all the time. Constantly climbing trees, stuck up trees, we all climbing frames, mainly trees. I love climbing trees. And sometimes I would get stuck. And if I got stuck, my parents would never lift me down. So even if I was crying, I'd be stuck in a tree and I'd be like, you need to come help me. Even if I'm like really upset. What my parents did, they'd come and stand at the bottom of the tree and they'd say, come on, you've got to lift me down. I can't do it. They're like, and the first thing they say to me, like, right, Galatea, stop crying. Calm down. And then I'd stop crying. And they'd guide me and they'd say, right. So, and they'd be standing there, so I'd be safe, but they'd be, right, so you put your foot here and and they'd guide me down the tree. And they'd be there to catch me if I fell, so, it wasn't, but, and they did it for various reasons. One of them being that one lesson, and my mum was most adamant on that more than my dad. She was like, to tell him, from my dad, she was like, we can't rescue them because if they cry and then they're like, this sounds hard. It wasn't harsh though, right? But it's like, if they cry and they're rescued, I don't want them to get the message in life. If they cry, they can just be rescued. But the thing with that is that when my parents guided me, they didn't abandon me. They didn't leave. It would be mean if they just left me to scream and cry in a tree by myself. Yeah, that would be abusive and cruel because I'd be panicking, wouldn't know what to do. They never did that. They came and they're like, it's fine, calm down, here's what you do. And then what inevitably happened was that as soon as my foot touched the ground, and I'd done it by myself with no help. I mean, with their help, with their guidance, but they hadn't touched me. I'd done it I'd be like, oh, I'd feel so happy. I'd be like, that I can do it. I know that I'm capable of being able to do that. That's amazing. I feel so good about myself. I feel so capable. And I'd run off and completely forget that I'd been upset a moment before. But of course, what that meant is, well, the lessons they want us to learn was that you can't just cry and get out of if you get yourself in a situation, you've got to know how to get yourself out. That you're capable. That you can't cry and expect to be rescued. If you you've got to figure it out. But I think, and of course, what happened was that when I would be inevitably stuck in a tree, because I used to run off and do it all the time, but when I would inevitably get stuck in a tree by myself, and I remember this used to happen to me several times when I was a kid, I'd get stuck and my parents were nowhere around. So what would I do? At first I'd be panicking, because I used to climb trees quite high. I'd be panicking. And they're like, no, what would my parents tell me? And then I didn't, because I would imagine them there and I'd know what they'd say to me. But like, right, Galatea, stop crying. And I'd stop crying. Like, right, what would they say? Okay, can I find a handhold? Can I find and I'd calm myself down and I myself could get myself out of trees then. So it's like, if they just lifted me down and rescued me, I would then be infantilized and incapable of being able to help myself when they weren't around, because your parents aren't always going to be around. So yes, I agree. This is kind of connected, because I agree. Your parents need to teach you how to be able to manage things when they aren't around, because they can't be so helicopter parenting I think is bad in that way, because you're not teaching them how to be in the world without you, and they need to know how to do that. But it's like that thing, give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach him how to fish, he eats for a lifetime. It's like that philosophy. It's like they're teaching me how to fish, really. But I like the reason I use that, the tree. It's the tree lesson, that's what I'm going to call it, the tree lesson. Is because I think that's a really great metaphor for like, but I love that metaphor because I think that works in terms of how they raised us all in general. It's, so with the climbing tree thing, they would never come in and rescue us from a situation. If we were in problems, it was like they expected us to solve our own problems, to deal with our own stuff. But that didn't mean they abandoned us either. It meant they would talk us through it. So anytime I know I can talk to my parents, even now I know I can talk to my parents, they're not going to solve anything for me, but they will talk me through it. They'll give me advice. They'll like talking me down the tree. They're not going to rescue me. They're not going to solve all my problems, but they're there for guidance. And also, they're not going to let me fall. So even if it all does go like terrible and it all goes the worst and it all goes to shit, even though they're not going to come in and rescue me, if I do fall, they're going to catch me. So like they're not going to, for example, let me end up on the streets. You know, that, like, stuff like that. It's like they're not gonna, yeah. So, and I like that because I think that's a good metaphor for, I don't know. So that's my point, is I'm not arguing for I think more responsibility, yes. But that's different. Am I making sense? Maybe I'll have to do a scripted, structured video where I, like, properly go through why that's different, but I feel like, is this enough to explain what I mean and what my position is? But I understand why people are getting annoyed, because I know there's an infantilization going on of young adults, and people are, childhood is being extended. I'm not arguing for childhood to be extended. Is that kind of clear now, or do I need to structure my thoughts properly and write that up and explain why that's a different thing? Yeah, but I hope that made sense. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about that, and this was kind of in a rough, chatty format, because that was something a few people kept bringing up. But no, that's not the same as being controlling or overindulging or infantilizing your older teenagers. I think you should do the opposite. But then being protective of them and knowing when they're being taken advantage of, or going, hang on, there's an obvious, yes, you're an adult and I trust you and I think you're capable and I respect you as an autonomous person. However, we also don't ignore reality when we acknowledge that there's a clear power dynamic here, or that you're more vulnerable or more able of being taken advantage of, and you're not an adult in the same way like someone a few years older was. Like, a few years older would be. So, like, if I was going out with someone a couple of decades older than me, would my parents get involved? No, I don't know, they wouldn't, because I'm an adult. Like, I know, like, more than I'm a proper adult. I mean, I don't think they'd be happy about it, but it depending on if, you know, I seem to be happy, if it seemed to, you know, probably take them a little while to come around to it. They're not going to tell me they're not going to get involved. Hope you know what you're doing, you're an adult, but, you know, we'll see what this, I think that'll be their attitude for me. But if my younger sister, who's 18, yes, she's also technically an adult, if she was dating someone a couple of decades older, they'd probably say to her, absolutely fucking not. I don't care if you're an adult, you're not doing that. Does that make sense? Yeah. Anyway. Goodness gracious. Hope that was explained something. Explained kind of my position and kind of maybe it was an interesting chat anyway. So, in which case, yeah, I've got some exciting ideas coming soon of like other stuff, and yeah, just cool ideas, cool things going on. Hopefully I'll get my camera back and be able to. I'll fight you. I'll fight her for it. Anyway, yes, okay. Thank you all for watching, and look after yourselves. I remember being like way up in a tree and like been freaking out, and I'd have a panic, and then I remember what you and Mum would say to me and go, right, stop crying, and then I'd stop and go, right, what would they tell me to do? And it's like, right, put my foot here, and then I could get down, whereas if you hadn't done that, I'd like, it was, you know, what was it? Teach a man to fish. Like,
yeah, Confucius, yeah, teach a man to fish. Give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for life.
So
but our parenting philosophy was benign neglect.
Yeah.
Is our parenting philosophy.
Yeah. So I remember trying to trick you when I was little, trying to pretend I was sick and get off school and never work.
No, but there's certain things, there's certain...
I remember once I practiced, I did this thing where I practiced throughout
I can't remember how old I was quite young. I was practicing sighing in front of the mirror before school. I was looking in the mirror, like, sighing, like, trying to look ill.
I caught you.
I practiced, and then I walked into the kitchen and, like, just gave this sigh that I'm practicing for ages, and you just looked at me and went, oh, for God's sake, Galatea, stop hamming it up. And I was like, right, I guess it's off to school for me then.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things, well, partly because, I mean, the reason why I was so brutal about sickness.
Yeah, you were horrible. When we were ill, it was just no. It was the way. I remember there were kids in my class who, when they were ill, they got to watch TV all day.
No.
Yeah, no, they got to watch TV and they got ice cream. When we were ill, first of all, we had to be vomiting or like with a limb lost if we wanted to be off school. And secondly, when we were
there's a very good reason.
And we were left alone in a room with nothing, with like horrible like vegetable broth.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
And then if I was caught reading. Because I'd have to read, and if I heard you coming upstairs, I'd have to hide the book, because if I was well enough to be reading, I was well enough to be at school.
Yeah. And there's a principle to that. Illness was meant to be purgatory. And the reason for that is, and incredibly boring,
Yeah.
because otherwise, all we would do is train you that illness was a way of copping out,
Yeah.
that it was pleasant, and that it was easy to give up.
Yeah.
And without being weird about it, we didn't want you to sort of get into hardwire habits of behaviour that would not serve you in later life.
Yeah.
And of course, all of you can push through when it's a little bit tough, keep going, and you've all become your own people, pursuing and doing what you want to do. You know, whereas if, you know, at the merest sniffle we said, okay, that's okay, go and lie down, that wouldn't have served you in any way, shape or form. And so that was the one area where we were pretty ruthless. Yeah, you had to be literally have your leg blown off and vomit.
Well, I'll tell you.